Welcome.
Thank you very much. And I first would like to pick up on something that, on the inspiring speech by Jerome, because actually we went to COP26.
Yes, we did.
To deal with the climate emergency. Can we get the presentation up? Yeah, indeed. And then I just go there. We went to COP26. Two people, one woman, Jill Warren, a man, me, dressed like diplomats, like negotiators. We got ourselves tickets. This was the 26th COP conference. It was the first time that we were invited. But we were invited. We got ourselves 2 tickets. However, we were not allowed to bring our bicycles into the venue. And then when we entered the venue, we saw lots of cars. And the biggest stands there was BMW, there was Shell, there was BP, there was Microsoft, Facebook, Toyota, Volkswagen. Those were the sponsors of that conference. Can you imagine that you have the fossil fuel industry and the car industry together hijacking a climate conference? But we thought we couldn't let that pass. This was the first time that transport was on the agenda of the conference, and they had prepared a declaration. But you know who had been writing that declaration? The fossil fuel industry and the car industry. And that whole declaration on the contribution of transport sector to the reduction of greenhouse gas emissions dealt only and exclusively with electric vehicles and building charging infrastructure. There was no word about public transport, no word about cycling, no word about walking, nothing about shared transport, nothing about mobility as a service. As I said, we couldn't let that pass, so with the help of negotiators and we being inside the room and thousands of cycling activists actually outside the security perimeter, we managed to get this bit of text into the declaration, which I admit it's not much, but it gives us a foot between the door. They can never uninvite us, and in the future, active mobility, walking, cycling will be part of the discussion, and the same goes for public transport. So that was just following up on Jerome's motivational speech, that actually there is something we can do. Now, you see, I asked whether I could get such a nice headset as Raluca has, because, you know, I need my hands and I cannot hold this thing and at the same time. So I dropped this. It's very hot in here. So I thought I should take off my jacket, because, you know, it's after lunch, it's hot in here, it's good you switch off the air conditioning, because we need to save energy, and Mr. Putin doesn't give us our energy, so we need to save. And then I thought I should roll up my sleeves, because this is a working session. We got work to do. We shouldn't just be a talking shop. And where I come from, Rotterdam, in the Netherlands, they say that there they sell the shirts with the sleeves pre-rolled, because it's really a working city. Anyhow, this is who I represent. We are civil society organization of citizens, although we also have a network for you, which we will talk about later. We have our headquarters in Brussels. And this is what we want to achieve. It's all very obvious, but the main question is not that we achieve this. It's also very important to talk about why we want to achieve this. And that's, of course, even that is obvious. Cleaner air, safer lives, healthier, happier citizens, more livable cities and towns. And that's why all regional and local authorities like you are actually working for cycling, because you know what it's good for. And I already mentioned the climate in my earlier says. Now, the case is that, just going back to this, that in Europe, half of all car trips is shorter than 5 kilometers. And 1/3 is shorter than 3 kilometers. So those can easily be done cycling or even walking. and the introduction of electric bicycles, which is also taking off in Romania, means that, as the research is showing, that people not only, the trips get twice as long, but people also cycle 1.5 times more trips. That's in total, that's an increase by 300%. And if you have tried an e-bike, go and try one outside. You will see there are no hills anymore, there's no wind anymore, you don't get sweaty, you don't get smelly. And for the older ones among us, we talked about inclusivity before, it extends the cycling life of people by about 10 years, because when you get older, like me, when it gets too hard to, you know, the e-bike, it's a real game changer. But as Raluca said, I was here to talk about money, right? And then I sometimes wonder, why should we talk about money? Because cycling is cheap. It doesn't cost much. We saw all kinds of nice computer-generated images of tramways and cycle superhighways, etc. But they were computer-generated images because the money had not yet been found to build it. But then, when talking about tramways, I think for the cost of 1 kilometer of tramway, you can get about 500 kilometers of bicycle way. When we compare with cars, 200 kilometers of bicycle road will buy you maybe 1 kilometer of highway. And there's so much you can do for cycling that doesn't cost any money. Reducing parking spaces, pedestrianize city centers. It's just putting up some signs or painting a bit. You buy a couple of cans of paint and you have your infrastructure. Now, I know there are people who say paint is not infrastructure, but it's a good start. And look at what they've been doing in Paris. They just painted and people started using it. Lowering the maximum speed from 50 to 30 kilometers an hour. It hardly makes sense any longer to use a car. So cycling is cheap, but still there is a lot you want to do that will require money in terms of infrastructure. Here we see why I'm talking about European money in this case, national money, you shouldn't ask me. The EU is heavily investing regional policy. Romania is one of the largest beneficiaries. That's the right word, right? And if you ask why, well, here it is: job creation, competitiveness, economic growth. You know, the cycling sector is responsible for about 1 million jobs in all of Europe. Competitiveness, reducing congestion, lowering costs. Growth, improved quality of life, I don't have to argue, sustainable development, etc. And actually, we have been seeing this over the past funding period, that slowly, investment in cycling across Europe has been rising. This map doesn't show very well on the screen, but you may see there. Well, it's better on your screen than on mine. Right. So this is where this money has been spent. And you see a small red dot in Romania, the big green dots in Bulgaria and in Hungary. So there's no reason for Romania not to have a big green dot, right? But that will be up to you to get there. To unlock EU investments in cycling, there's two things that you need. One is explicit reference to cycling in your plans, and the other is a national cycling strategy. This map is not completely up to date any longer because Italy just published its national cycling strategy. So Italy should be turning green, and then the map will get greener and greener, and the red areas will get smaller. And I heard about the Romania Plan Velo. Plan Romania Velo?
Romania Velo in the Romanian recovery plan. Yeah.
We'll get to that. And here you see that it really is about a lot of money in total, maybe what is it? 1,000 billion euros. And as I said, part of that will go to Romania, but you need to get your hands on it. In particular, the Recovery and Resilience Facility has been mentioned before. part of the response to the pandemic, and of course during the pandemic we saw that cycling was actually part of the solution when people didn't want to sit in crowded buses or metros, etc., or when people were locked up but still wanted to go out, get fresh air and exercise. And many cities invested in pop-up infrastructure, most of which became permanent, not all, but we see still that the cycling levels during the pandemic are being maintained. There's quite a bit of investment, cycling investments planned in the national recovery and resilience plans. Here you see we compared the country's cycling content, and Romania is scoring very well there, actually, in contrast to Finland, Germany, Ireland, who don't have any cycling content. And you see also here that Romania is high on the list. And of course, Italy, Spain are much bigger countries, but Belgium and Hungary are not. But Romania is clearly upping its game. But it's not only the national government, it's also the local authorities like yours who need to implement this. The Plan Romania Velo, changing the legislation, very cheap changing the legislation. You don't need money for that. You need political will, actually, to change the relationship between cars and slower vehicles, pedestrians, cyclists. Like in the Netherlands, if there is a collision between a car and a bicycle, it's always the car's fault. However stupid the bicycle has behaved, the weaker one needs the protection. Or getting rid of the rule that you cannot cycle if you're under 14, not cycle alone in Romania. Construction of tourist cycle tracks, very useful, brings in a lot of money actually. In the whole of Europe, the cycling tourism sector is bigger than the entire cruise ship sector in providing jobs, in providing income. The EU regional funds, also there, large opportunities, and the good thing is that if you invest in cycling, it will count for 100% towards the climate and environment coefficient. And as at least 30% needs to be climate related, this will actually help you get your hands on regional funds. We at the European Cyclist Federation, please do take a picture of this, because I don't know whether you will get the slides, but there is the address where you can download our Romania country guide on how to apply for European funding for your projects. I'll say a couple of more words about that later on, and I hope that the slides will be sent out to you. The partnership agreement with Romania has already been adopted, and the operational program is still in negotiation, and there's still room for you, through the relevant ministries, to influence. I hope we will hear about that later, but this is our best estimate. And here are some ideas what you can do. 3 Romanian cities, Bucharest, Cluj-Napoca and Suceava, have been selected to become part of the 100 climate neutral cities. They will have extra additional opportunities, and you cannot get climate neutral without a lot more cycling. Developing route networks, and then all the urban nodes in the TENT, I think Brasov is one of them, need to have a sustainable urban mobility plan by 2025, and also that will not be doable without a lot more cycling and public transport. Regional cycling, there must be a reason that this is actually the National Recovery and Resilience Plan of Romania, and there is a reason that there are cyclists, cycling tourists actually on the cover. But you know, the good thing is, if you build a touristic cycle route, the cycle route doesn't care whether the cyclist is a tourist or a commuter or a cargo bike. You know, the infrastructure doesn't care. So if you can get money for tourism, get the money for tourism, and then your commuters will be able to use it. That's what they do in Italy, actually. And then there's one problem with the bicycle. It is very, very bad at long distance travel. Trains are very good at long-distance travel, but they really suck at door-to-door. So therefore, invest in intermodality. Make it possible for people to take the bike on the train. Provide bike parking at bus stations, at train stations, or bike share schemes. And these are pictures from the Netherlands and Denmark. But Slovakia, for instance, which is not very far away, is actually investing heavily in this kind of thing. And this is indeed bike share schemes. Try the bike shares outside. I think in Bucharest there is a more or less developed system, but we see that it also works very well in smaller cities. It's even easier in smaller cities because the cost of redistributing or charging the bicycles is a lot lower. So these are the recommendations. There's a lot of money available. You can still influence the operational program. Explicit references to cycling and output indicators, KPIs, get them included. And if you can, adopt a national cycling strategy because it gives guidance and direction to what you are going to do. There's some other funding sources. I used a lot of time, so I will slowly skip them, I thought. The EU Social Climate Fund, and it needs to address social impacts, and there, of course, cycling also plays a role because it increases the cohesion in society. You know, when everybody is closed in the car, they're not communicating, but cyclists do actually communicate with each other and feel part of the community. It's still being negotiated, and here's what we expect, hope to expect from Romania. So have a look at that. Ooh. And then there's the European Urban Initiative is being launched at the moment. This is interesting for cities in particular, and it's not so much about building infrastructure, it's about building capacity, building knowledge, to support innovation, and also to talk to other cities, to become part of a network. And then we have our own network of cities and regions for cyclists, which I would all encourage you actually to join. This is a bit of a commercial, but this is what we do there. There are so many cities all over Europe who have the same challenges and who have been looking for the same solutions, who have maybe had their failures, who have had their successes, and who are actually willing to share them. You don't all have to reinvent the wheel. This is actually the present map over the members in our cities and regions network. There is so far just one member in Romania, Timiș County, which joined last year. If they're here, go talk to them and ask why they joined and if it is a good experience. And this is what you get if you join. Preferential access to our knowledge. We have a 25-person office in Brussels who know all the alleys and byways of the Commission bureaucracy, who can actually help you find your way in Brussels and connect you to the most relevant actors and players. The exchanging I mentioned before, free participation in the Velocity Conference 2023 in the second week of May in Leipzig, not too far away. And of course, you can showcase your own accesses and will get access to high-level partnership opportunities. And this is the best thing. It's really cheap. As I said, cycling is cheap. So membership of our network is also very cheap. If you are interested, do take a picture of the screen for the email address of Froso Christofides. And I noticed during the last session that there's actually quite a bit of competition going on among Romanian cities, right? You all want to become the greenest city, the most sustainable city, the most climate-friendly city, or why not the most cycling-friendly city? And in other countries, in the Netherlands, in Sweden, in France, and I'm sure there are more, there are actually national competitions And every year there is an award for the best cycling municipality or the best cycling city. And it's really something that cities and municipalities fight for. So my proposal for the Green Cities Forum would be that you create an award for the best cycling city. And a nice prize, and that you can see how you organize it, whether you let the public vote or use experts. Both models exist, but competition is good. Competition is healthy. So I really liked to see all these cities wanting to be the best. I think that was it for me. Yeah, this is me. If you want to send me an email or follow me on Twitter, this is where you can do it. Thank you.